Hello students. Students, we are studying the 8th chapter of your syllabus, that is respiration and circulation. And by far in this chapter we have completed the respiration part, and then in the previous session we have studied about circulatory system. So we have just started with the circulatory system. So in this session we will be first revising what we have studied in the last part, and then we will be moving to the next part of this chapter. So in the last part we studied about circulatory system in animals. And when we speak about circulatory system, the body fluid is moving inside the body. Okay, so the body fluid is circulating in the body, and the function of this body fluid is uniform distribution of the respiratory gases or the food that is absorbed. So the food that is absorbed by the body, it is then assimilated through these body fluids. Now, to study further about the circulatory system, we also studied the types of circulation. Now, the types of circulation can be studied on the basis of two aspects. So, let us study on types of circulation on both the aspects. So, the first aspect that we studied was on the basis of where the circulation is taking place. So, on the aspect of where the circulation is taking place, circulation is of two types. It can be intracellular or it can be extracellular. Now, intracellular circulation, it is seen in unicellular organisms. So, the lower unicellular organisms, for example, amoeba or paramecium, it shows this intracellular circulation where the circulation is only through the cytoplasm. That means all the respiratory gases or the nourishment, it is circulated through the cytoplasm, and this process of circulation through cytoplasm, it is called cyclosis. Then the next one is extracellular circulation. Now here something that is circulating inside the body is outside, or you can say it is in between the cells, and this is seen in higher animals. For example, you can take as mammals or birds. And when we speak about humans, so you can take an example of human also for extracellular circulation. And in humans, the blood moves through capillaries. That means there is a network of these capillaries through which the blood moves, and these capillaries are moving outside, or you can say it is moving in between the cells of the body. So this is on the basis of first aspect, that is where the circulation is taking place. Now, on the basis of what type of fluid is getting circulated, the circulation can be either environmental fluid circulation or it can be internal fluid circulation. Now, environmental fluid circulation here is water. Okay, so the environmental fluid here is water, and it is seen in cases of certain aquatic organism like sponges or hydra. So the external fluid, for example water, in these aquatic organisms, it actually helps in supplying the respiratory gases or the nourishment. So if you see in the first picture of sponges, there are certain pores on the visible pores on the body, the external body of sponges. Through these pores, the water actually moves in and moves out, and this moving of water inside and outside, it is continuously, and as the water is moving inside and outside, it is actually exchanging or supplying these respiratory gases and the nourishment. So this was about the environmental fluid circulation. The other one is internal fluid circulation. So in internal fluid circulation, it can be either blood vascular system, or it can be lymphatic fluid system, or it can be hemolymph. Now further, let us study about blood vascular system, that is the internal fluid circulation. So when we study blood vascular system, we first study the types of the blood vascular system. So blood vascular system are of two types. It can be either open blood vascular system, or it is also known as open circulatory system, or it can be closed blood vascular system, which is also known as closed circulatory system. Now in open blood vascular system, the fluid that comes out of the blood vessels and the tissues are dipped into the fluid. So over here in open blood vascular system, the fluid, the body fluid, you can take an example of blood. So here the blood comes out of the blood vessel and the tissues and the cells of the body, they are actually dipped into this fluid or the blood. So the exchange of gases or the exchange of nourishment in this case is between the blood and the tissue directly. Okay, because the tissues are getting dipped into the blood. So the exchange takes place directly. The second one is closed blood vascular system or closed circulatory system. Here the blood will never come out of the system. So the exchange that takes place, the exchange of nourishment and respiratory gases that takes place, it is between the capillaries and the tissues. So there is this network of capillaries which actually goes in between the cells and the body tissues, and the exchange is between the capillaries and the tissues. Okay, so the capillaries are carrying the bloods are carrying the respiratory gases as well as the nourishment, but the exchange of the blood and the tissues or the body cells, it is not direct, it is indirect, it is via the capillaries. So that is closed blood vascular system, where blood never comes out of the blood vessel or the system. Now this closed blood vascular system, it can be divided into two types. It can be either single circulation or it can be double circulation. Now let us study both of these two types. Single circulation, here the blood passes through the heart only once during each cycle. So in one cycle of this circulation of the blood, it passes through the heart only once, so it is single circulation. Now to understand this single circulation, the example that we take is of fishes. Okay, so what happens in fishes? Here the deoxygenated blood, okay, the deoxygenated blood in fishes, so the deoxygenated blood in fishes, it is pumped from the heart towards the gills. Okay, so if you see, this is the heart, and then this heart pumps the deoxygenated blood towards the gills. Why it pumps it towards the gills? So that at the gills it undergoes oxygenation. Okay, so when the blood gets oxygenated at this gill, then it is taken to the body, to all the parts of the body, and then once this oxygenated blood, it circulates in all the parts of the body, it again gets deoxygenated, and then again this deoxygenated blood is carried to the heart for the next cycle. Now if you see that in this case, in one cycle of the circulation, the blood passes through the heart only once. Now there is one more thing about the fishes, that the heart of fish, it only carries the deoxygenated blood. Okay, and because it carries only the deoxygenated blood, it is known as venous heart. So if you see, now one more thing that I need to tell you all over here is blue color of blood, it always represents deoxygenated blood, whereas the red color will always represent oxygenated blood. So if you see at the heart region of this fish, the heart region is blue in color. That means the heart of the fish will only and only carry deoxygenated blood, and that is how it is known as venous heart. Now let us study about the double circulation process. So in double circulation, here the blood passes through the heart twice during each cycle. Okay, so at each cycle the blood will pass twice. Now the example that we take over here is of birds and mammals. Okay, so what happens in these animals? Now in these animals like birds and mammals, the heart pumps the deoxygenated blood. Now please remember, blue color is for deoxygenated blood and red color is for oxygenated blood. So if you see, the heart is pumping the deoxygenated blood towards the lungs. Why is it pumping it towards the lung? Because at the lungs, the blood, the deoxygenated blood will get oxygenated because the lung is carrying the oxygen. Okay, so as the blood at the lung gets oxygenated, it again comes to the heart, and this process, this one cycle or this one passage of blood, this is known as pulmonary circulation. Okay, so it is known as pulmonary circulation, where the blood, the deoxygenated blood, is pumped from the heart to the lungs, and the lungs oxygenate the blood and then again sends it back to the heart. Now what happens further? Now further, the oxygenated blood in the heart is again pumped by the heart to several parts of the body. Now once this oxygenated blood is used by all the tissues and all the cells and all the parts of the body, it again gets deoxygenated, and then this deoxygenated blood that is used up comes back to the heart again. So if you see over here, in one cycle, the passage of the blood through the heart, it is twice. So in one cycle, the blood passes twice through the heart. So the blood pumps the deoxygenated blood to the the heart pumps the deoxygenated blood towards the lungs, where it gets oxygenated and it again comes to the heart. Then the heart will again pump this oxygenated blood to the body parts, where it gets used up and gets deoxygenated, and then again it will come to the heart. The second process, where the oxygenated blood goes to the body and then comes back to the heart, this is known as systemic circulation. So if you see, in one cycle, the blood passes through the heart twice. Okay, now in humans, as humans are, we took example of birds and mammals, so humans, the heart shows double circulation. Okay, now let us further study about circulation by studying the blood vessels. Okay, so to study the blood vessels through which the blood is circulated, we first have to study the structure of the blood vessel. So there are three blood vessels: the artery, the veins and the capillaries. Let us study about them. So these blood vessels, the arteries and the veins, are made up of three parts or three layers, you can say. The outermost layer is tunica externa or tunica adventitia. So this is the outermost layer over here, which is known as tunica externa or tunica adventitia. Now it is made up of fibrous tissue so that it can provide strength, and when we say about fibrous tissue, that means the collagen and elastic both. And this layer, this particular tunica externa layer, it is supplied with nerves and it is also supplied with vasa vasorum. Now what is vasa vasorum? Vasa vasorum are known as the blood vessels of the blood vessels. Now when we speak about arteries and the veins, these arteries and the veins, to function properly, they require oxygen and they also require nourishment. So that oxygen and nourishment to these arteries and the veins is provided by vasa vasorum, and that is how vasa vasorum is called as the blood vessels of the blood vessel. The second layer is tunica media, which is a thick muscular layer. So if you see, in both the cases there is this muscular layer over here. This layer is known as tunica media. Then there is this internal layer which is known as tunica interna, and it is made up of two layers. The outermost layer of tunica interna is elastin layer, which is made up of yellow elastin layer, and then inner is endothelium, which is made up of simple squamous epithelium. Then we speak about capillaries. The capillaries, the outer layer of the capillary is made up of basement membrane, and the inner layer is made up of endothelial cells. And these capillaries are nothing but network through which the blood is passed, or the exchange of nourishment and the respiratory gases takes place between the tissues and the blood. Now let us do a comparison study between the arteries and the veins. So when we compare the arteries and the veins, the arteries, they take blood away from the heart. Okay, that means the arteries, if the arteries are taking the blood away from the heart to various parts of the body, we can say that it is carrying the oxygenated blood. And the veins, it actually takes the blood to the heart. That means the blood which is used by various parts of the body, which gets deoxygenated, it is carried by veins and it is taken to the heart again for the purpose of oxygenation. So that is how we can say that arteries will carry oxygenated blood and the veins will carry deoxygenated blood. The next comparison is that the arteries are deep situated. Okay, they are deep under the muscles except for few locations. The few locations you can say as the wrist or the neck, where you can actually feel the pulse. So when the heart is pumping continuously, the blood is pumped through the heart to the arteries, and because of that pumping of the blood into the arteries, we can actually feel the pulse at two regions, that is the wrist region and the neck region. So arteries are deep situated under the muscles, but for some exceptional places or locations, it is superficial. Then when we speak about veins, veins are superficial under the skin. They are always superficial under the skin. Now the arteries, they do not have any valves. Now the function of these valves are actually to prevent the backflow of the blood. Now the arteries, they carry the blood from the heart to different parts of the body, and they are carrying oxygenated blood. So there is no such risk of the deoxygenated blood getting back to the heart, because it is carrying oxygenated blood. Whereas if we speak about veins, veins have valves which actually prevent the backflow of the deoxygenated blood, so that the blood doesn't flow back to the body again. Then if we compare arteries and veins according to their anatomy, the external layer, that is tunica externa, is thinner in arteries and it is thicker in veins, whereas tunica media is thicker in arteries and it is thinner in veins. And elastin layer, that is tunica interna, is thicker in arteries and it is thinner in veins again. And if we speak about the lumen, that is the passage from the innermost passage from where the blood is circulated, it is narrow in arteries and it is wider in veins. So if you see in this diagram, this is the lumen in between. You can see the lumen in between of the arteries and the veins. So in veins, the lumen is wider, whereas in arteries the lumen is narrow. Okay, so this was the comparison on the basis of their structure. Now there are two more comparisons that can be done between arteries and veins. If we compare the arteries and veins according to the blood flow, so suppose if there is a cut or any injury on any part of your body, okay, now if during that injury the artery is damaged or the artery is exposed in that cut, the blood which will flow out, it will be jerky, because the heart is pumping the blood continuously, and because of that pumping of the blood continuously, the blood which flows out is jerky. Whereas if the veins are damaged or the veins are exposed, the blood which will flow out, it won't be jerky, it will be uniform and it will be very regular. Okay, so just with that flow of the blood, you can make out that if the artery is damaged or the vein is damaged. So this was the next comparison, and the last comparison says that arteries get empty after the death of the animal. So once the animal dies, the arteries that is carrying the oxygenated blood, it gets empty. Why it gets empty? As the blood the heart pumping stops, there is no more blood which is pumped from the heart to the arteries. So that is how the arteries will get empty, whereas the veins will still carry the blood. So this was about the comparison between the arteries and the veins. By now, by far, whatever we have studied, we had already studied in the previous part. Now in this part, we will be studying about the composition of the blood. Before we move on to the composition of the blood, let us study about some basic characteristic or basic features of blood. Now, in normal healthy adult, they have, or a normal healthy adult will carry 5 to 6 liters of blood. Okay, so a normal adult will have 5 to 6 liter of blood in the body, and this blood is known as liquid collective tissue. Okay, the next thing is blood is mesodermal in origin. Okay, so there are 3 germ layers. It is endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm. So when we speak about blood, blood is mesodermal in origin. Then blood is slightly alkaline and it is opaque. Now when we say slightly alkaline, its pH is slightly above neutral, that is it is 7.4. 7 will be neutral, so it is 7.4, which says that it is slightly alkaline. And the study of blood is known as hematology. Now the blood, it is made up of 2 parts. Okay, the 2 components of the blood are plasma and the formed elements. So 55% of the blood is comprised by plasma and the formed element are 45% in the blood. Now when we speak about these formed elements, it means the corpuscles, that is the white blood corpuscles or the white blood cells, and the red blood corpuscles or the red blood cells. Okay, so 55% is plasma and the rest 45% are RBCs and WBCs and some other material. Now, as I have discussed previously also, oxygenated blood, it will be red bright in color, and that is how when we draw a diagram, we show oxygenated blood as red in color. Okay, so the arteries will carry oxygenated blood which is bright red in color, whereas the deoxygenated blood is purple red in color, and that is how when we draw a diagram, the veins, okay, or the deoxygenated blood, it will be shown blue in color. That means it is showing that the blood is purple red or it is deoxygenated. Now let us study further about the first component of the blood, that is plasma. So plasma, it is alkaline in nature. It is comprised of 90% of water, 1% of inorganic ions, 7 to 8% of protein, and the rest 1 to 2% is actually the absorbed foods. Then there is waste material like urea, and then there is some intermediate compounds like lactic acid. Now in the previous parts, we have studied about lactic acid getting accumulated in certain muscles of your body, which is known as muscle fatigue. Now when these lactic acid, when we do excessive exercise, there is this lactic acid accumulation in the muscles of your body, and then it leads to muscle fatigue where you have certain muscle pain, and after a few days or after some times, that pain is automatically released because this intermediate compound like lactic acid, it is now transferred to the liver. So from the muscle where the muscle fatigue has taken place, from that muscle it is transferred to the liver. So the transfer of this intermediate compound or the lactic acid is done through the plasma. Okay, so that 1 to 2% of plasma will have absorbed food, it will have waste material like urea, and then there will be some intermediate compounds like lactic acid, and then there will be immunoglobulin, that is the antibody, and cholesterol. Now let us take one by one all the components of plasma or all the parts that plasma has. So the first one is inorganic ions. In that, sodium and chloride are the 2 main inorganic ions that are present in the blood. Other than that, there is calcium, there is potassium, then there is also a carbon dioxide transport element, that is bicarbonate. Then there is dissolved gases, that is the respiratory gases, which is oxygen and carbon dioxide, and then there is waste material, that is urea, uric acid, ammonia, and creatinine. So these waste material are taken from the place where they are produced to the kidney. Okay, it is taken to the kidney, and this transport from the place where they are produced to the kidney, it is done by plasma. And if these waste material like urea, uric acid, ammonia, it increases in its limit, as it increases its limit, the condition will be known as uremia. So if these waste material, they increase in the body, the person suffers from uremia. Let us study further about the plasma proteins. Now the plasma comprises about 7 to 8% of protein. So the proteins are of three categories. Okay, it is serum albumin, which is also known as albumin. Then there is serum globulin, and then there is clotting proteins. Let us study about them one by one. So serum albumin, which is also known as albumin, its function is to help in osmoregulation. Now when the word osmoregulation comes, we know that it is holding on of water. Okay, so in plasma, serum albumin, which is a protein, it helps to hold the water. So if the albumin is deficient in the body, or it is deficient in the blood, this water will move out and it will accumulate in the tissues, and this condition is known as edema. So this happens why? Because there is no serum albumin in the blood to hold that water. So if the water is not held back into the plasma, it will automatically come out and it will be accumulated in the tissues. So if you see in some people, there is this swelling in certain parts of their body, and this swelling is actually because it is known as edema. It is due to accumulation of water in the tissues. Then the next one is serum globulin, which is also known as immunoglobulin, and it is written as Ig. So it is nothing but antibodies against certain or specific antigen. And the last one is the clotting protein, which is actually helping in blood clotting. And these clotting proteins, the name of them are fibrinogen and prothrombin. So whenever there is a cut or any injury, if the blood flows out, okay, after some times the blood will clot automatically. This is because these clotting proteins like fibrinogen and prothrombin, they get activated or they get stimulated, and they are responsible for clotting of the blood. Then there are anticoagulants like heparin. Now these anticoagulant like heparin, it does not let the blood clot, and that is how it is known as anticoagulant. And they do not let the blood clot when the blood is circulating in the body. Okay, so what happens? When the blood is circulating in the body, what is activated? Heparin is activated, so that the blood will not get clotted. But once there is a cut and the blood vessel is exposed or it is ruptured, then the action of this heparin is now stopped, and then, or it is suppressed rather, and then the action of clotting proteins like fibrinogen and prothrombin is activated, or it is stimulated. Okay, so it works like that. Then after plasma protein, the plasma, it also helps in uniform distribution of heat. Now then there are certain activities or metabolic activities, or you can say internal activities taking place in different parts of the body. And when these internal activities take place, there is heat produced at specific area in your body. And this heat that is produced at specific areas of the body, it has to be evenly distributed to the body. Okay, so that the temperature is maintained equally or uniformly throughout the body, because we know that there are some enzymes, certain enzymes in the body that work only in specific optimum temperature. So it is very necessary that there is uniform distribution of this temperature in the complete body. So that is done by plasma. So you can say that plasma, it helps in maintaining the homeothermy. Then other than this, plasma also carries food material like glucose, amino acid, fatty acid, monoglyceride fats and glycerol. Now when we speak about glucose, the normal glucose level that has to be there in particular individual, it is 80 to 100 milligram per 100 ml of blood. Okay, now if this 80 to 100 milligram it exceeds and it reaches or it exceeds, you can say, more than 180 milligrams or even more, it is excreted out. The glucose is excreted out in the urine, and this condition is known as diabetes mellitus, or it is also known as hyperglycemia. And if the glucose level falls, that means if it is less than 80 in the body, the condition is known as hypoglycemia. So it has to be, the level has to be very optimum between 80 to 100 milligrams per 100 ml of blood. If it increases more than 100 mg, like you can say 180 or more than that, then the condition is known as hyperglycemia or diabetes mellitus. And if it falls below 80, then it is known as hypoglycemia. Now next, there are certain regulatory substances in the plasma. The regulatory substances are hormones, they are vitamins, and they are enzymes. Now hormones are secreted by certain ductless endocrine glands, and that is how we say that these hormones that work in specific or different areas of the body, their site of production is different, and then where it is used up, it is different. Why is it that so? Because then once the hormones are produced in these ductless endocrine glands, or they are secreted by these ductless endocrine glands, they are poured into the blood. Okay, and as they are poured into the blood, they are circulated through all the body parts. Then there are vitamins that are formed, and even those are present in the blood, and then there are certain enzymes also which are present in the blood. So the blood also carries the regulatory, or rather I would say plasma also carries the regulatory substance. Then there is also cholesterol that is synthesized in the liver. So the liver synthesizes the cholesterol, and it is then again poured in the blood, and it is transported via the plasma. Now there are specific function of these cholesterols. It is required for vitamin D synthesis, then it is required for the formation of steroid hormones, and it is also required in plasma membrane. Okay, to provide strength to the plasma membrane, it is required. And then cholesterol, it also synthesizes bile salt. So all these functions are done by cholesterol, which says that cholesterol is the good cholesterol, it is very important, and the plasma carries this cholesterol. Now students, we end this session over here. So in this session, we have studied about the blood plasma. We have studied the first component of the blood, that is plasma. In the next session, we will be studying about the other component, that is the formed elements, or you can say the corpuscles, the WBC and the RBC.